The walls around high-end console gaming seem to be coming down, but behind closed doors, one of the industry's biggest ecosystems just slammed shut. The evidence for this retreat is buried in the 2026 PlayStation Business Strategy Report, a document recently submitted to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Over several fiscal years, Sony Interactive Entertainment included a standard reassuring clause in these filings. They explicitly stated a commitment to rolling out first-party titles to multiple platforms, specifically naming the PC to expand their audience. But in the meticulously drafted June 2026 report, that multi-platform clause is gone. The acronym PC has been surgically removed from the release roadmap for their single-player narrative titles. Wall Street analysts and gaming media immediately flagged the omission. It signals a complete and absolute reversal by the new PlayStation leadership duo, effectively killing the aggressive multi-platform expansion championed by former CEO Jim Ryan. PC ports were originally hailed as a frictionless, highly lucrative secondary revenue stream. For a corporation to kill a seemingly profitable venture overnight implies a severe failure in their internal metrics. Sony's accounting department has mathematically proven that PC ports were actively sabotaging hardware adoption rates. The internal data ultimately forced a strategic retreat to strict platform exclusivity, a move they are now subsidizing through a massive, systemic overhaul of their entire development pipeline using artificial intelligence. Removing those two letters from a binding legal document formally restarts the monopolistic hardware war of the PS2 era. The early waves of PlayStation ports, like Horizon Zero Dawn and the 2018 God of War reboot, experienced explosive initial sales on Steam. But the financial momentum of subsequent waves utterly collapsed. The structural flaw in the strategy was the sheer engineering overhead. Ruthlessly optimizing a proprietary PlayStation engine for thousands of disparate, fragmented PC hardware configurations is an incredibly expensive undertaking. This graph charts porting costs against consumer price willingness over time. As you can see, development costs remain flat, but the PC demographic's willingness to pay the full $60 or $70 MSRP steeply drops off for games that are already years old. To compensate for tight margins, some ports were rushed. The PC launch of The Last of Us Part 1 suffered severe technical optimization issues, resulting in mixed reviews on Steam and inflicting immense reputational damage on one of Sony's premier studios. Even when the technical execution succeeded, titles arriving over 2 years after their console debut captured only a fraction of their original sales velocity. The cultural zeitgeist and marketing hype had evaporated, and PC players had moved on to native releases. Then there is the opportunity cost. Studios like Nix's Software were acquired with the sole mandate of porting aging titles. This diverted elite engineering talent away from assisting primary studios in developing native, system-selling blockbusters for the next generation. What began as an initiative to secure supplementary income mutated into a resource-draining financial sinkhole that actively damaged brand prestige. The console hardware industry operates on an ironclad law. The physical box is frequently sold at a loss. Sustained profitability is derived entirely from software sales, proprietary accessories, and high-margin subscription services. The only mechanism that compels a consumer to invest $500 into a closed ecosystem like the PlayStation 5 is the exclusive narrative masterpiece. Without these system sellers, the console is an underpowered desktop. Internal telemetry data revealed that communicating eventual PC ports actively caused potential buyers to delay or cancel their console purchases. They were cannibalizing their own competitive advantage. This catalyzed newly appointed PlayStation leadership, including Herman Hulst, to enforce a doctrine of platform stickiness. The economic imperative is to build an ecosystem so rich with exclusive content that leaving it becomes unthinkable. On a balanced scale, a $60 Steam sale isolated transaction yields only $42 net profit. Compare this to a console player's lifetime value, purchasing hardware, controllers, and PS Plus subscriptions. Plus, Sony's 30% cut of third-party store purchases generates massive continuous revenue. The mathematics are definitive. The lifetime value of a dedicated console player dwarfs the transactional value of a PC port purchaser by a factor of 10. The previous administration's expansionist strategy prioritized short-term quarterly revenue spikes at the direct expense of long-term ecosystem health. Securing a $42 net profit on Steam is a catastrophic failure if the consequence is losing a multi-thousand-dollar ecosystem loyalist to a competing platform. Despite this aggressive lockdown on single-player narratives, the 2026 SEC report explicitly outlines a massive, highly lucrative exception. Live service and online multiplayer titles will continue to receive simultaneous day-one releases on both PC and PlayStation. This matrix shows Sony's divided model. Single-player demands exclusivity for hardware sales, while live service requires total platform ubiquity. For multiplayer survival, tracking concurrent users shows success relies exclusively on a massive day-one player base. Artificially restricting this audience guarantees prolonged matchmaking, stagnation, and eventual collapse. The executive board learned this irrefutable lesson from the expectation-shattering success of titles like Helldivers 2. Launching simultaneously on Steam and PlayStation utterly obliterated internal sales records for a Sony first-party game. Sony is actively constructing two distinct corporate entities beneath the PlayStation umbrella, one operating as a manufacturer of premium storytelling consoles, and the other acting as a pervasive third-party publisher for massive online ecosystems. Platform ubiquity is an absolute economic necessity for the survival of multiplayer games, but applying that same logic to their narrative masterpieces would fatally dilute the prestige of the PlayStation brand. Abandoning supplementary PC revenue for single-player games is inherently dangerous. The production budgets for premium, system-selling narrative experiences routinely eclipse $315 million. This chart maps the exponential growth of development budgets over the last 3 console generations. A flagship title cost roughly $40 million in the PS3 era. By the PS4 era, it hit $100 million. Today, the baseline entry for a AAA PS5 ecosystem title easily exceeds $250 million. To offset the loss of PC revenue without suffocating their studios, Sony is turning to the most heavily redacted segment of their SEC filing, the systemic integration of generative AI across every stage of the software development lifecycle. The first module is intelligent procedural content generation. As shown in this digital rendering, new algorithms can automatically generate massive, geographically accurate open-world topographies, complete with geological erosion and biome blending, in a matter of hours. This profound automation liberates human artists from wasting months manually placing individual trees, rocks, and background vehicles. It allows them to focus entirely on bespoke art direction, narrative integration, and flawless level design. The second module addresses the massive overhead of global localization. Sony is utilizing neural radiance fields to generate real-time translation and language-specific dynamic lip-syncing for 3D character models. By synthesizing emotive vocal performances for secondary characters and automatically adjusting facial animations, this pipeline bypasses the need to hire armies of international voice actors and book hundreds of recording studios worldwide. The third module addresses quality assurance. Reinforcement learning bots are deployed in virtual server farms to autonomously navigate game environments millions of times per day. They actively hunt for physics engine anomalies and memory leaks, proactively suggesting code fixes before human testers even log in. Nix's software, once Sony's primary bridge to the PC, has been entirely reintegrated into the core development pipeline. Their engineering talent is now being spent maximizing the low-level architectural efficiency of future PlayStation hardware, rather than universal PC compatibility. Instead of chasing low-margin secondary sales on Steam to recoup bloated budgets, Sony is utilizing AI to aggressively lower the actual cost of production at the source. Consequently, every unit sold natively on the PS5 yields a significantly higher profit margin. Sony's strategic retreat from the PC market does not occur in a vacuum. This decision inflicts a massive, significant macroeconomic blow across the wider interactive entertainment sector, starting with major PC hardware manufacturers. These other major silicon and processor manufacturers also face severe downstream impacts from this sudden shift in premium software availability. The entire PC upgrade incentive loop is heavily tied to the availability of generation-defining, graphically intensive blockbusters. Consumers justify purchasing a $1,200 GPU specifically to play these high-fidelity titles. By permanently locking the world's most acclaimed narrative games behind a proprietary walled garden, Sony is effectively redirecting consumer discretionary income away from PC upgrades and straight into the PlayStation ecosystem. This uncompromising lockdown stands in stark contrast to Microsoft's Xbox division. Microsoft has spent the last decade painstakingly dismantling its own ecosystem walls, pushing a pro-consumer strategy of ubiquitous accessibility across consoles, PC, and crowd streaming. But this presents a stark contrast in perceived value. When a consumer with a limited budget must choose a single piece of hardware, the console holding the absolute monopoly on prestigious, untouchable narrative art becomes the infinitely more attractive choice. The surgical erasure of the acronym PC from the 2026 roadmap is a profoundly confident reassertion of intrinsic platform worth. It strictly dictates the terms for the upcoming 10th generation console war. To rule the interactive entertainment industry as an undisputed monarch, a corporation must ultimately realize that it can never loan its crown to a competing platform.